Okay, this is certainly not going to be a professionally shot video since I've got my iPhone on top of a crate and we won't even talk about how it's anchored. But I'm going to do the best I can because I promised to do one today. This is the Derwent Inktense Blocks and I bought it a while back. I really haven't used it as often as I thought, or used them as often as I thought I would, but I kind of love them. I think I really even love them more than I do the pencils. The first thing I did is swatch them out because if you'll see the Derwent logo and the pencil number, they're all numbered, that's on the block. But as soon as you start using it, unless you think to turn them upside down, which I did not, they're going to disappear. And with wear and use, they're going to disappear anyway. So I swatched them out this way, and I also wrote the numbers on this plastic tray, which is a little bit flimsy, and there's been a lot of comment about that. But what I do, if I want to use them, there's only 2 trays, so I take one, and I put it in the top, and I leave the other one in the bottom, and I just use them that way. So this is what they look like, and I use them straight out of the bins. You can, well, we'll get it there in a minute, but you can take them out and use them too. I just always try to put them back in the same place or I'm going to be hopelessly lost. When I first started using the Inktense, I thought they were going to be super brilliant, and it turns out they can be. They'll be very rich and vibrant, but it takes layers to do it. So I'm just going to use my black velvet brush, which I adore, and I think you can probably see it. And all you do is you wet your brush, and I guess you could spritz it too, but I don't do that. And wet the block. These the black velvet brushes hold a lot of water, and you just paint. One of the cool things about Derwent, but to me makes it not really, it's not watercolor. Let's just start there. It's ink, and most of you know that. But that means it dries permanent. Now, while it's wet, you can actually, let's go ahead and do that. You can mix it, or you can smooth it out, lighten it, and even lift it. But when it dries completely, you can't. The only exception to that is I think I wanted to try it out. So I used either the pencils or the blocks. And another way you can use them, by the way, is take the block itself, and let's just say you want to draw a very sad little flower. My brush is still wet anyway. And it comes out when it's wet, it's so vibrant, and you think, oh wow, that's going to be way too bright and vibrant for my painting. But just like watercolors, they do not dry as dark or as vibrant as they look. Also, when you do it this way, it's almost impossible to get rid of the lines. I think you can see it, but I want to make sure. But you can see the dark, you can see the dark outline, which is good if you want texture. I can think of a million ways to use them for and have some texture when you want it. But anyway, so what I've done here is I didn't completely dissolve the pigment. And if you do that, and again, I did this and ruined a painting one time with the pencils or the blocks, either one. If you do that and you go back to layer over it later, it's wet right now, so you would expect it. But let's just say I wanted to layer, and you can layer over it. Some of that pigment below that didn't dissolve is going to, and you're going to end up with a lovely green. Which, by the way, is a pro. Most of these things are pros and cons now that I think about it. The fact that it leaves a texture, if applied directly to the paper, that's a pro and a con, depending on what you want it to do. The fact that if you didn't completely dissolve the underlying color, also pro or a con, depending on what you wanted to have happen. Let's just talk about some of the different. I think you might even be able to see that that's drying lighter. But what if you just want to make a mess, have fun? What's it going to look like if I draw with it? Maybe I want really rich dark colors here. It's like drawing with pastels at this point. Of course, you're not going to be able to move them. Maybe I want to mix those two colors. And I also want a different mixture of a dark blue, and maybe the yellow again, the bright yellow. I will say this though, it does come off, and just to preserve for next time, you might want to clean off your blocks before you use them, or at least pay attention to what you've done. So now I'm just going to go over it. And it just becomes so brilliant. Rinse my brush a little bit, since I had all of those colors in it. And again, I'm going to get a different shade of green. I almost never, I won't say never because I have done it and I got great results. I almost never apply the pencils or the blocks directly to paper. Partially because with the blocks I usually want a little bit finer detail. Although now I'm looking at it thinking, wow, you could get some really great backgrounds this way. The question is, how blended do you want it to be? If you want it to be super, super smooth, you would just apply it with a brush. See, that's still coming up because I had not dissolved it all. And you're going to get a good spread from a fairly small amount. This is a really brilliant orange, or really bright, rich orange rather. So you can make a lovely mess or something really beautiful. Like I said, I almost always use it just like I would a palette. Some on my brush. Wet the block, and paint with it. They're actually kind of a dream with the black. If you've got a really good watercolor brush, they're great. It's almost as good as using a water brush because the good watercolor brushes hold so much water, you don't have to keep dipping in there. And again, you could wet all of them with a light spritz. My gosh, I don't even know. I've got, this is the full set, so I have a lot of colors, and they are incredibly beautiful. But the real beauty to me is, I think those first layers are dry enough that I can do it and show you. Now, maybe I want to go over this with the blue. I hope I'm still in frame. I really wanted to do this live. Yep. It was dry enough. Nothing is coming up. Nothing's lifting, which means I both dissolved it and it's dry enough. Let's try a different color. Yep. And so what you can do, and by the way, I guess that's a good example. If you want to, can you bleed? Can you blend? Let's get another random color. Obviously, we're not doing works of art today. But you can bleed them in to get, they operate, it feels like, just like watercolor to me. Maybe one difference would be being able to get texture from the blocks or to use them as blocks or pencils. But pretty much anything, oh, and they are transparent, unless you layer quite a bit. With the exception of, and I will mention this because it's definitely a pro of the Derwent Inktense, the white, especially the block. Let's see, let me take that out. The white, which is right here, is fabulous. It's not as opaque as, say, an acrylic, but if you make a mistake, you can get a good mix of the white. I don't even know what's dry. There we go. And go over it. And if you'll notice, it does not look like it's really covering it right now. You have to be, I would say be fairly thick with it. Be fairly generous. You want a pretty intense white. It dries more opaque. And then you can just continue right over, especially if you want, let's just say, I had done a dark background, or in this mess right here, and I wanted something to kind of pop off of that. If I went over it with the white, let it completely dry, and I do mean not like, I would say even more so than you would do in watercolor. Let it completely dry. And then go over it with a light yellow, a light transparent color. The white beneath it is going to really make it pop. So that's a really good tip too. So I guess pros and cons are it operates very much like watercolor, but it is permanent. It is ink once it dries. So again, pro and con. You cannot lift it when it's wet. Pro and con, depending on what you want. 72 colors and an infinite number that can be mixed, just like watercolor. But I have to give props to Derwent because they gave a beautiful, beautiful range of colors. And I'll let you see those again. And again, this is the set of 72, so you can get some idea of what's in it. I'm trying to think, honestly, of what I don't like about it. I think that the real reason I don't use them all that often is because most watercolor has been my focus for 6 months. I'm trying to learn that, and I don't want to get used to something that is not a watercolor. And with the fact that it's permanent and doesn't lift and does have white, it means that there are some aspects to it that would almost that are not watercolor enough that it would seem fair. You know, the same techniques can't be done in watercolor. You can't necessarily achieve the same effect as easily in watercolor. Makes them great to use, and I absolutely love them. But since I have mostly been in watercolor groups and trying to learn that medium, I haven't used them as much as I probably will in the future. I hope this helped a little bit. Again, sorry about the lack of masterpiece. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what they would do. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you.